All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to be going over the absolute most basic form of what we call dynamic content that can be displayed in an app using AppMaker for Jira. So when we say dynamic content, what we mean is content within an app that can change based on external factors like data changing or things like that. Everything we've shown you up to this point has been what we call static content. So you've hard coded that content into the JSON. And that's useful in some scenarios, like if you want to have like a banner or some static information that's the same to everyone. But most of the time, you're going to need some level of dynamic content that changes based on external factors or is a dynamic and is sort of automatically updating. Otherwise, you're kind of having to hand code or hand write everything, and that's not very useful, is it? So the first thing to know is that dynamic content in AppMaker is primarily achieved using something called Handlebars syntax. You may already be familiar with Handlebars syntax. It's used in a lot of other tools. There's a very detailed documentation on how Handlebars syntax works, but basically it is just the process of sort of wrapping sort of fields that you like named values, like your first name or last name, inside sets of double curly braces to sort of indicate that you want to inject some content into the app. Now, Handlebars is not something created by us. It is an open source solution. It's used in heaps and heaps and heaps of tools. And it's something that is nice and standardized and easy to understand. And you probably may have already used it before. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new UI component, and we're going to use the same syntax as what we used in sort of the initial videos. We're going to chuck this in here. And now this is very similar to what we've done before, except that we're saying this is now a dynamic field div just to make it sort of clear of what we're doing. And if you go down, you'll see here that there are some things in curly braces. Now, like I said, this is the simplest form of dynamic content. There are much, much, much more complex and powerful forms of dynamic content available. We're not getting on those right yet. This is the simplest form. So don't look at this and be like, oh my God, that doesn't really do much. It's designed to be very basic and simple. So what we're doing here is we're just templating some data from the Jira issue that this UI component is rendered on into the UI component. So if you have, say, a bunch of custom fields that are on your Jira issues that maybe you don't have rendered in a way that is like the way you want them to be, you want to combine maybe 4 or 5 custom fields into a custom widget that is shown on your Jira issue sidebar. Maybe you want to have 3 or 4 different widgets with different custom fields and different headings. The way Jira works today doesn't really support that. It's just that you kind of have to just clump them all together. You can't group them. You can't give them headings. You can't style them or anything like that. What we could do here is we could allow you to create your own custom widgets, which just pull data from existing Jira custom fields. So the way you would do that is you basically would set the value of the field. You can also set it in the key if you wanted to. Anything in here can be done dynamically. And you would do the double curly braces inside the double quotes, and you'd go Jira issue dot and then the field name. So the field name in this context would be the key. It's going to be the Jira issue key. Or if you want to say get the summary, or if you want to get a custom field, you would go say double curly braces Jira issue dot fields dot summary or dot custom field something something something. You will need to know the ID of the custom field you're trying to add if you want to add custom fields in here. If you just Google how to find the ID of a custom field in Jira, there's plenty of instructions on how to get those IDs. Anyway, so main thing here is you can see that we've got these double curly braces and the Jira issue.key, and in this case Jira issue.fields.summary. And again, on our documentation, if you go here, you can go to the Jira issue fields, and we have the entire Jira issue object. You can sort of look through and see and get an idea of what data there is available. There's also pages on Google that you can find that show you that stuff as well. So what we're going to do is going to hit save, and then we're going to go quickly back to AppMaker, and we're going to have a look at the app that we just created. Let's see if I load that up. And you'll see here what it's done is, so this is our dynamic field data UI component. So the issue key, but you can see here, this is not the curly braces Jira issue.key that we created. It's actually the issue key. It's the AMT-1 issue key that we have for this issue. And so this will change if I go back to another issue now. That won't be AMT-1, it will now be AMT-5 because this is dynamic based on the Jira issue that's being rendered in. Now, something else to take note of is the issue summary section of the UI component that we just created. So you'll see here that the issue summary, which is test issue 2 up here, is dynamically injected here. And you'll see here that if I go back to the other issue, my test issue, what that will be injecting will be different because it pulls from the issue here, so my test issue. But there's this previous section here, which is the same. It's the same. It says the summary of this issue is colon my test issue. So what you can see here is that dynamic content does not have to be the entirety of the value. It could just be a subsection of the value. So in this context, the summary of this issue is colon is static. And then just my test issue is the dynamic component. And this allows you to do things like create blocks of static content and then just template in the dynamic parts that you want to make more flexible. And this is how you create sort of more sophisticated components. And to give you an example of how it works in sort of like a real app, up here, Jira has this description section here that's hard coded. You can't change that. But what goes in here is dynamic. I can add whatever I want in here. And this allows you to do the same thing with custom apps. So you can create static sections and then you can add dynamic things in here. You could do the same thing with a heading, or you could do the same thing with a key. You could even say like issue key colon and then add a value there. That would work just as well. So to show you what that looks like in reality, if I go back to the apps section here, and I go back to custom apps, and then I open up the app we are just talking about, you can scroll down and you can see that with the issue key, the entire value is just this curly braces section here, the template. And that's why all you see is the issue key. Whereas with the second field, the issue summary, you can see here, there's the summary of this issue is colon and then the template. So it's half of it's static and half of it is dynamic. And this is perfectly fine. You can add the dynamic content any way you want, as long as it is wrapped inside the double quotes. That's the main thing you need to make sure you do, is wrap it inside the double quotes. If you don't wrap it in double quotes, you will get an error. And the app will tell you, hey, you need to have something going on. And sometimes it'll add an extra quote for you. All right, so we've added all that in. You now know how to do very, very basic dynamic content in your apps. Awesome. So now you actually have something that you would call an app. Because if I give you an example, if I go back to here, so what you'll see if I update this title to say my issue 2, and then I refresh the page, is that this now says issue summary, this issue is colon test issue 2. So you can see here now that this is fully dynamic and it updates as soon as I update this value here, and it's pulling the data in directly from the Jira issue. So what this allows you to do is you can do really powerful things, like you could use Jira automation to automate processes for updating values in, say, custom fields or fields on the Jira issue, and then your custom UI apps here will automatically pull that updated data and show it to your users. Now, real quickly, an example of where that kind of dynamic content where you're just templating values from the existing Jira issue could be useful is something I want to run through right now, because it's not immediately obvious why that's sort of any more useful than, say, just what Jira does off the shelf. So I want to show you an example of where you could use that existing capability without having to add anything extra more complex, just using data sort in Jira and assembling those fields in a particular way. So let's look at an example here. So in this example, we've got a bunch of custom fields which we're storing some data in, and this is something that you might see all the time. With Jira, you might be just have a bunch of custom fields which people are adding data to from forms. You might be using automations, or you might just have people manually adding it in there. Point is, it's very common to have a heap of custom fields on a Jira issue that are just being used to store bits of data. Now, often what you don't want is you don't want them here, like crowding out your Jira issue main section, because that gets really noisy, it gets really complex, it gets really messy. You don't want them here. Ideally, you want to tuck them away somewhere so that you only see them when you need to. Now, one way you could do that today is by removing them from this view and adding them to this details panel. So to do that, you would go to manage fields, and you would sort of move them all down here into this context section. And then you would sort of go save and then back to the project and open that up. And all right, cool. They're gone from here. Now they're over here. That's a little bit neater. At least they're not creating mess over here anymore. That's great. But now they are kind of creating a bit of mess over here. Like they're sort of interspersed amongst all of these. Yep, you can shuffle them around. You can move them up and down, but they're just going to be in this section here. Now, particularly where this is relevant is if let's say these custom fields are actually related to particular topics. And so you don't want them just to be sort of interspersed amongst all of these fields here, creating a mess. Ideally, you want to be able to give them their own like widget in sidebar. So it's like maybe fields 1 and 2. So the first and second are related to one topic, and then maybe fields 3 and 4 are related to a different topic. And you'd actually like to be able to split those out into separate widgets and display them independently of each other so that they don't crowd out this section, but also so that you can have an extra context around what they relate to. So that is something that you can do with App Maker. So I'll show you how to do that right now. So just to show you an example, I'm going to quickly just change this issue name. And this is going to give you a little sneak preview of another feature of App Maker, which we call conditions, which we'll show you later on. So I've just changed it. I've added a dot into the name. And what we'll see here now is this. We've created these two custom widgets. So we have custom widget 1 and custom widget 2. And you see custom widget 1 is showing custom field 1, custom field 2, and the values of custom field 1 and custom field 2. And custom widget 2 is showing the values of custom field 3 and custom field 4. So now you can have these custom fields in their own independent little widgets with their own sort of title. You could add your own you could add some more text in here to explain what they are related to. You could make these more dynamic. You could actually make these the lozenge color, that little gray background there. You could actually change that color depending on what the value of the custom field is. We'll show you how to do that later on, but that's something you can do. So you can create your own kind of conditional styling based on text. But it just gives you much more control over how to organize these fields so that they're not all just kind of gunking up the issue and creating a mess. Now, they're still cluttering up the section here. So in theory, if I go manage fields, I can just I could just remove these. I can drop them over here and remove them. Now, there we go. So they're all now removed. And I go save. And I go back to the project. Now they're all removed from the details panel, but they're still here because what you need to know is that once an issue has been created in Jira, removing it from the issue doesn't delete all the data in that field. So the field is still available to view. So you could be adding values to that field via things like automation for Jira, via the API, via whatever else you want, via forms. And these widgets will still display that data, even though it's not showing up in this details panel or in the main section here. So you can see here now, we've got all this extra data here. We're storing these custom fields, but it's not cluttering up the Jira issue over here at all. All right, so real quickly, we're going to clean up what we've created here. So we're going to go back to our apps, back to custom apps, and we're going to just remove that UI component that we created. And then in the next video, what we're going to be doing is diving into some much more powerful forms of dynamic content that aren't just pulling in data from the Jira issue. Because obviously, the data from the Jira issue is already available. It's not the most powerful thing in the world. It is useful, particularly for creating sort of simple apps that just pull data from existing fields. But realistically, you want to be able to pull data from other places. You want to be able to store data from other places. You don't just want to be working with data which is already in Jira. And so we'll be talking about and showing you how to do that using some functionality that we call data objects.